Hello, ladies and gentlemen of YouTube, and welcome to another episode of Fanalysis, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. I'm Retty4, this is Greyjet91.
Hello.
This is Evan Never95.
Hello.
This is Jen Sarai1.
Tuck in your shirt, Scruffy.
And this is Antoine Bandalay.
I solemnly swear that I'm up to no good.
Listen with the summary for this episode, Matt. Chapter.
It's okay. So this is chapter 4, Flourish and Blotts. This is where Harry and the Weasleys, they kind of go and meet with their new classmates in Diagon Alley, or whatever he said.
It took
Diagon
me
Alley.
until 3 years ago to figure out what
That's
that joke
diagonally?
was about. Yeah, I was
that
like,
late?
what is
Wow.
Diagon Alley? Like, I don't get what the fuss is about. And I was like, oh.
Yeah,
I remember as like a
I'm in the world.
5-year-old, my mum saying, "Did you know that's what that was?" And I was like, well, "Yeah, duh."
I can totally hear your mom saying that. Like,
Yeah.
now that I've met her.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and you just being like, yes. Like, what do you take me for?
He was a smart ass even as a little kid.
Yeah,
Unfortunately true.
This is basically where they go school shopping, and for wizards, that's really cool. You know, it's not mundane at all. So let's get into that.
Yeah, we open up with breakfast at the Burrow, pretty much,
Well,
because it's
tuck your shirt in, Scruffy.
Yeah.
As Connor said.
leading
Which is
him-
dope. It's there's more magic going on because he's looking at himself in the mirror in in this magical house, and then like it talks back to you. You're like, oh yeah, that's totally it's magic. That should happen.
Mm. And we get the general kind of explanation of the kind of routine in the Burrow, the kind of mix of the magical and the mundane that Harry's going through, and just getting to
Right.
experience this family life for the first time, which is important for the series because obviously the Weasleys are his family effectively. He doesn't really have anyone else. The Dursleys really don't count for him or anyone really. So this is the nice introduction to that like kind of establishing background for his life. That will be the norm for the rest of the books to come.
Yeah, he's
It's
kind of like,
also-
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, it's also just the contrast between the Dursleys and the Weasleys, because the Weasleys, magic aside, are kind of how a family should be, an ordered chaos where everyone has their space. Whereas the Weasleys, it's like, because of their intense hatred of wizards and magic, are almost fascistic in trying to quell any imagination. It's like, how dare you say the M word? How dare you threaten Dudley?
Even in the simple stuff, like Mrs. Weasley's constantly trying to give him thirds and fourths for breakfast. He didn't get that with the Dursleys. It was always just here, have a bowl of cold soup. It's she's trying to create opposite parallels or contrast, I guess, directly between the two at every turn, and it helps hammer in the
I
importance
like
of them for
opposite
him.
parallels better. That was funny.
Yeah.
We have opposite parallels here. What? But
Like preemptive retaliation all over again.
Oh god, yeah, that was the thing.
which one of you said that?
That was me.
brilliant.
That was me again.
Yeah.
Preemptive retaliation. We're in reference to
See what
Thrawn
happens
and
when
the
we try to
Plowbooty
sound
video.
smart
But...
here.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Um,
mostly me. I just fall flat.
But,
But the routine is established, and we get the lead into the initial breakfast before the actual going out.
Well,
They
even the
discuss
main
book.
thing that the part about like this series is that it's really about personal relationships, and the main thing that he takes away from all of that is that everybody there likes him.
Yeah.
That's like a significant thing, is that he feels welcomed and loved there, and wanted there.
He very
Yeah,
quickly becomes another part of another member of the family, which I love as well, because they don't have to do that. Even for a gracious guest or gracious hosts with a welcome guest, that's not always a given. And the Weasleys, you can get the impression that it just always is. Even people like Hermione, when she comes in, part of the family. It's really nice to read about.
I think he amasses like pretty much like a quasi family from like a bunch of the people he meets like later on. But this is definitely the first step in that direction, and it's like the most consistent one for sure. And it's really nice.
Hagrid's another example
And then
of the one who
Right.
would be that for him. Yeah.
yeah, and he's actually in this chapter, so we get ourselves some Hagrid later.
Yes.
But
We
yeah,
need him with a
there's,
book list. The book list is the next big
Right, I was
thing.
gonna bring that up. The book list, and this is like, I just realized like the now that you typed it out, it's like there's only 2 authors on the whole thing.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
Miranda Gottschalk with the
And
standard
then
book of
Gilderoy
spells, grade
Lockhart.
2, and it's just his entire book catalog. Like what a racket this was, and I now see the reason he took this job. It was just to move units. That was all.
Basically.
That's the only reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again,
Like a typical
Dumbledore.
university. That's the best way.
Again, though, Dumbledore asleep at the wheel. It's like, oh god, really? Am I
He
going to make all
literally-
these parents
he
pay
could
for
not-
these books?
he had no other applicants. He couldn't have. Like,
No,
there's
no,
one
not,
applied
not
for the
even
job.
not even with accepting him into the job. I just mean the whole letting him plug his book catalog, because parents have to buy this stuff. It's like, really? Am I going to put this on the mandatory list? All right, fine. Why not?
The problem is, though, is that technically speaking, all of Gilderoy Lockhart's books on how to fight various dark creatures actually do provide useful
That is
information.
true. Yeah, because he's
Because,
sharing with other people.
Yeah, it's like even if they're all predicated on the lie that Lockhart did all this himself, the methods described are genuine and are how you would actually do this. So it's not like they're useless to read, even if it's literally just Lockhart wanking off to himself.
Yeah, you are right there. And to be fair, it's probably part of his contract in the job. I'll take the job if you let me plug all my books.
Yeah.
So I imagine that was
I like
something going on.
the titles as well. Like each one is like a bad episode of Scooby Doo.
Yeah.
They're all like A Break with the Banshee, Gadding with Ghouls. Like it's just Travels with Trolls, really.
Voyages with Vampires.
Yeah.
Who can forget the immortal literary classic that is Voyages with Vampires?
I don't get the idea that they'd be very fond of water, though. The salts in the sea. It seems like an odd pairing for the vampires, but interesting read, I suppose, as a result. But we all get the Ginny introduction as well. She's obviously been brought in by this point, as we said with the previous chapter. But she's, we get the discussion of her going to Hogwarts as well, and the concerns about this book list costing more money than they have. The twins themselves raise that, which I like.
Absolutely, that's ridiculous. Did they have to buy like 4 sets of the or 5? Because Percy still goes to school. 5 sets of the same books. Like that's ridiculous.
If I was the Weasley, or if I was the parents, I would just be like, okay, I'm buying 1 set, and you guys are all just going to copy from each other at school. Share amongst yourselves.
Especially the twins. Like you guys are always together.
Share amongst yourselves.
Yeah.
I mean, they all share a common room, so yeah, it wouldn't be that difficult.
Yeah. It's just figure out which book Lockhart is making them quote from on the day.
Right.
Yeah, just got to work out as well which classes overlap, because they're going to need them in the actual class themselves. So not a good thing. But they managed to afford it somehow. So the books can't be that expensive, given the.
It's because their budget just pertains to what they need for school every year. They can like make their own food or grow their own food rather. And we talked about wizard money.
Yeah, worth noting the food is plentiful at the Weasley household. So they clearly have their own little thing going on there in the house and the family.
I suppose that is the one thing that all of the wizards generally have over Muggles, is that where Muggles have become increasingly reliant on the central power grid and society to provide for everything. Every single individual wizard family is in and of itself self-sustaining, because they're not relying on, technological support. They're able to just do everything themselves with magic. So, if a famine swept Britain, the wizards would be fine.
Well, yeah, even though but they can't create food, magically, they have, culturally developed into that sense of autonomous independence. That they have. They have the ability to produce their own food, either it be the kind of eclectic farm, pigsty stuff like the Weasleys, or you imagine some sort of estate farm for the Malfoys.
Very helpfully, while they can't create food, Hermione mentions they can replicate it if they already have some.
Yes.
So, as long as you're not neglecting your supply, you don't really need to ever spend money on it.
And speaking of Hermione, she comes up in the letter, which I thought was actually one of my favorite parts of the chapter, especially because it's Ron speaking Hermione's words, especially his commentary halfway through when she's talking about like doing schoolwork during the summer, which I've had classmates like in elementary school where you'll come back from like summer break when you're supposed to just be like having water fights, stuff like that, and then you have like those few kids who are like, yeah, I read like 5 books this summer. I was like, read 5 books? Like, what are you doing? Like, you're doing summer wrong. You're doing summer wrong.
That would have been me, but they probably would have been Harry Potter books.
Well, it's like you're not doing summer wrong if you're reading those books in a lawn chair outside.
True. Yeah, I'm always reading outside.
It's fine.
If I
but Harry Potter often does not count.
But yeah, the letter itself between Hermione and Ron I like, because we get Hermione later on physically in the chapter, and this is the introduction where she says, we're going to Diagon Alley, and they decide the date they're going. But I like that it's that kind of that quick entry of her as well, so we get the trio effectively together even before they physically meet. It's nice to see
also,
that connection
like
have communication wise.
Book Hermione has a different voice than Watson's Hermione. I think Watson had it like more so in the first 2 movies, but then like when she was less prim and proper, that the way she is comes off in the books to me than in the movie.
Yeah, she's more casual. It's like
more casually smart versus being like
the audio drama does a good job.
Yeah.
It probably
in a way
helps pair off against her with Ron as well, because he goes further into the more casual as well. So Ron's voice is also slightly taken to the extreme, and they go polar opposite.
Yeah, and I do think it also does kind of make a little bit of sense when it's like in the book, the whole point is that Hermione is always to a certain extent overcompensating. She knows she's intelligent. She knows that because of that, she's got bigger expectations on her shoulders. So she overdoes it because she wants to live up. But at the same time, she's pushing into an area where she's not always entirely genuine because she's trying too hard.
This is the girl who, whose boggart was a set of exam results. So she's definitely got that kind of.
She's afraid of failure.
Yeah, she's afraid. She's afraid of disappointing herself and others. So which fits closely in with her early, development as a character, because she was someone who needed other people to be happy early on, and yet couldn't do that. Not until Ron and Harry, anyway. Which is why I like this scene. This is kind of again that reintroduction of that dynamic, and I've always loved the trio as a set of relationships together.
Also, in terms of building friendships, I also like the little pickup game they have of like Quidditch in the backyard. Like that idea, like she's still bringing that over. That in Muggle world you would have just pickup games of like football or whatever, but having it with Quidditch would make sense as well. But even more so that they have to play in a secluded area because you have to be away from sight of Muggles.
Yeah, I feel really bad for Ron that he's slower than a butterfly on his old stick. Like that's really slow.
He could walk faster than he can fly on a broom. That's bad.
Yeah, but there's that. Just the visual of that is pitiable. It's like they run out of like flying charms like after decades or something like that. It seems like they just crap out.
Certainly the older ones, yeah.
Well, the thing is that does kind of make sense, because it seems to me that it's almost like broomsticks are almost like much longer lasting, but I actually see them a little bit more technologically, like more like a little toy gimmick like this. This is just a little flashing LED light that I have no way to replace the battery. It's basically just a little one-off thing. So, yeah, it's basically... it's still got a little bit of life, but not very much. But yeah, it's like once this dies, it's dead. And I figure broomsticks are probably the same way. It just takes longer.
And depending on the power of the enchantment, Hogwarts isn't going to flutter out anytime soon because they were created by the demigods of magic. But when it comes to sort of the mundane stuff, I mean, for one thing, it's business based. You don't want your broom production to just disappear as soon as everyone has one. So I suppose that makes sense on that level.
They're like cars. You get a nice one, and it'll last you longer. Like you get a cheap one, it's gonna crap out. Like that's what it is.
Yeah. Also get the introduction of the ordinary wizarding levels, the GCSE equivalents, in this chapter when they discuss, again, Percy. So that's introduced to the world as a new thing. It's actually quite a big book for firsts. Actually, she steps a bit more into the establishing of the
world building.
Yeah.
Right. Well, in a grander sense too, because you kind of can do that too. Because in the first book, you have to kind of focus it so you're not like overwhelming someone. But since you have the opportunity of the book too, you can do that more and be like, okay, let me start seeding things that are like later in the book, because now I know that I'm probably going to be able to make the series now because they let me do a second book.
Well, the fact that it was not quite exploding at its height by this book, but it was definitely getting there.
It wasn't the third one.
Yeah, it was definitely getting there though, and the fact that she's already established everything that she needs to, and like I said in the focused first book, this is where she can bring in those elements that would otherwise just get cut out of the original. She can actually spend time on them now, so it's good to see that she's using that time appropriately.
Yeah, she has to do it at some point. This just seems like the most natural place to do it. I mean, the whole blood purity thing, like without that, you really don't have the overarching conflict of like the entire series, and that's not a thing in the first one. Understandably, you can only throw so much at, especially for kids. You can only throw so much at them in the first book. Like they have to gradually get this.
But at the same time, I do like how the first book does drop a lot of hints about stuff like that. Like I mentioned how the first chapter of this book has the little offhand mention of how the Dursleys didn't have a drop of magical blood in them. You do see stuff like that peppered throughout.
She makes allusions to the grander kind of ideas that she has in her head far earlier than she actually physically introduces them to the story. So yeah, you're right. I like that she spends time on that. Even in the small mundane stuff, like we said previously with Mundungus Fletcher, that's no name, nothing reference, but then later on, oh yeah, it's actually a person in the world. Sirius Black from the first book, obviously being the prime example.
Mm-hmm.
She does take the time to make notes of these things.
And it's also kind of interesting when you go back and reread the first book and think about major events that are mentioned in later books. And it's like, wait, this is the date that happened. This is where Harry was when that happened. Like, just the idea that when the day Hagrid dropped Harry off at Privet Drive with Sirius Black's bike, that was the day that Peter Pettigrew blew up a city block to frame up Sirius.
Yeah, she actually keeps a thorough outline of dates in that way, where she actually outlines her books with the idea of like the school year and each month and day and what event happens on which day. So she actually is pretty good about like keeping that up to an extent.
Most other people aren't good at keeping track with it because obviously the time frame is a few years before the actual present.
Right, and there's a few things she gets wrong. Like obviously, like I think Dudley has like a PlayStation when they either didn't exist yet or something like that. I don't remember, but like.
Yeah,
but that's
she's
kind
right
of
on the line with that one. Yeah, it doesn't matter. So it, also, like my favorite nitpick that doesn't matter is the date of the story starting was not a dull gray Tuesday. Like, she says it was Tuesday. It's not. It wasn't a Tuesday. But in any case, it doesn't matter. We can move on.
The next thing is the Floo powder. An introduction to the Floo powder and how some wizards travel.
Yeah, again,
this is another thing that they buy as well. Like they have to buy this because they can't take it.
Yes, yeah. I like the kind of mundane way she treats it as well. Like the fact that this is through the Weasleys' perspective. They're like, well, it's Floo powder. You do this, and they're talking about grates and don't get out too early and make sure you can see the right one and all that jazz. I like how they're just treating it just like any form of transportation because that's what it is to them. Meanwhile, Harry's like, what? What's going on? It completely out of no frame of reference to work from at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
We've all been
now,
there.
One thing I do like is how the tiers of travel that wizards have do kind of make sense and do have direct Muggle analogs. It's like learning how to apparate is the equivalent of getting your driver's license. Buying a broom is like buying a bicycle. Floo powder is like having a bus pass.
As we know, the Floo powder goes slightly awry with Harry's ability to use it, shall we say. Takes a big waft of hot ash, which you'd think would be the first advice I'd give. Don't inhale the ash; it might make you choke. But no, that's the one thing that slips their mind as they berate him with all this information that otherwise distracts him, and he gets out the infamous line.
Which now reading it makes more sense that it's diagonally.
Yeah,
I get it now.
Yeah, in the movie they kind of turn it into more of a joke, as if Harry is just so taken aback by the whole idea of Floo powder that he steps into the fireplace, goes to use it, and just breaks under the strain and just blurts out diagonally. But in the book, it's like, no, he inhaled hot ash and screwed up saying it because hot ash. Borgin and Burke's.
Yeah, arrives at Borgin and Burke's in Nocturne Alley, which
I could have sworn... Which is really cool.
Yes, yeah, it does. Yeah, this is one of the big plot-heavy locations in the setting where she thinks, okay, this is where everything evil happens outside of Hogwarts. I could have sworn that there was a Nocturne Alley chapter. When we got to this chapter, I thought, wait, is there not Nocturne Alley between this and Flourish and Blotts? But there is a Nocturne Alley chapter somewhere in the series, right? Or am I imagining that?
Oh,
sure. Yeah, they go back there.
No, he means like a title.
I mean the title chapter. Title, yeah.
Oh, I don't know. Like possibly in Half-Blood Prince when they go there again. And try to spy on what's going on, and like Hermione hilariously like fails.
Yes,
trying to figure out what's going on there. But that's like right down the line.
Yeah, no, maybe I'm wrong there, but I was surprised when I reread this one. I could have sworn it was named that beforehand, but because it is quite a long sequence for the start of the chapter. Whereas some chapters can have like openings that last 5 seconds. This one was a long extended period before you even get to Flourish and Blotts. Which is in Diagon Alley proper, obviously.
This shop has to have like some kind of like. They have to be following some kind of loophole in the law, like because it seems like completely illegal. Just that this is like the evil shop in wizard, in the wizard world that's just allowed to operate with its doors open for some reason. They come in and buy illegal things.
Yeah, it almost certainly has some prestige from its historical presence. Like this is something that's been around for a long time, and therefore they just let it be.
Like that's its front. Is that we're just like retaining this, but then it's a black market that's actually happening.
It's, antique artifacts shop. So it's okay. It's part of history. And then whenever anyone comes to inspect, he maybe just shuffles them into the back room, or the dodgier stuff.
But the thing is that it also kind of makes sense that shops like this, like not necessarily all shops like this would be selling stuff like this, but there are a lot of shops like this throughout the wizarding world, because when you think about what would the wizards themselves trade? Well, they don't really have much use for raw materials. Most of what they're going to be trading is their equivalent of technology, which is enchanted items. And because of that, shops like this are going to be pretty common. It's like, as far as they're concerned, this is just like a bootleg electronics store.
And there's also going to be a lot of support in the ministry for it, because Malfoy isn't the only old family that has interest in artifacts. This is going to be something that they're trying to actively protect with loopholes in the law and such.
It's like how many places like this have been able to keep going because of government corruption? Friends in high places.
Yeah, I think it would seem like less shady if it was just like a secondhand store, but just the fact that everything in there seems sinister is like, okay. Like,
it is very on the nose,
place, Arthur.
Yeah, precisely. If you want to raid somewhere,
whoever,
raid here. Yeah, but it is very on the nose. But again, it's going back to that kind of early whimsy of not whimsy in this case, but early her blasé nature with some of the world-building stuff here. I think she just kind of went, oh, this is an evil place. The kids will get it. Don't question it.
I mean, just the fact that like Dumbledore could tell the world, okay, Voldemort used to work here.
Yeah,
it's like, there might be something a bit shady about this place. Like
that's an excellent point. Yeah, the fact that he has evidence for that one. He could present, the evidence for that specific example, even if he had to tweak it a bit. But yeah, it's an interesting
like
place.
He who must not be named, like proud employee since 1962.
Yeah, header over the counter. It's like Tom Riddle. That'd be that'd be an interesting court case. But yeah, we get to the meat of this specific scene, which is of course Draco Malfoy arriving. With obviously his father for the introduction to him. I love the dynamic that's established between the two in this moment. The fact that Malfoy is looking around and is like, oh, Potter. So it's like, yes, I believe you've told me this many times already.
Yeah.
It's like the idea of Malfoy just reaming off constant complaints about how Potter's so special. It's like, oh, Malfoy, you poor child.
Well, and it's like you get where it comes from, because his father does that. He compares him to his peers. Like, it's like, Malfoy seems to be a fairly good student when he cares about the subject.
Yeah, he's very clever.
But the fact that he doesn't outperform Hermione in anything is all his father focuses on here.
Yeah, beaten by a Muggle-born. How dare? Well, no.
I was under the impression that he was. If she would be the valedictorian, he would be the. Is it called salutatorian?
Salutatorian.
Salutatorian. Yeah. That's the impression I always got from Draco.
Well, yeah,
he's up there.
Yeah, he's definitely up at the top tier, if not second. Yeah, for sure. Which is something that a lot of people forget, I think, because they, he's bad. He's the bad guy. Who cares about him? He does have a lot of extremely powerful.
He earned his way into the Newt's level potions, which required an outstanding. For example, there's things like that. And he's good at occlumency. Which
when it comes to being an athlete, maybe not so much. That one he bought himself into.
He bought himself into that.
Everything else was on his own merit.
But even then, he's good at flying a broom. That's or at least
that's true. He didn't actually, but then no, even in the first lesson, remember, like he said he's been doing it for ages, and then
that's what I'm saying.
Who said you're doing it wrong, your technique's wrong, whatever. So
so it's a bit limited on that front. But the point stands as well with stuff like the vanishing cabinet. He made that work.
Right.
It took him a while, but he figured it out. He's clever.
Yeah. It's like when Dumbledore says ingenious when Malfoy explains it to him. It's like we have no reason to question Dumbledore's assessment. He meant that quite genuinely, genuinely. Like, damn, that was clever. Good job, kid.
It wasn't condescending Dumbledore. It was legit. Like, oh wow, like that was a clever plan. Good on you, man.
Yeah.
You might get me killed for it, but good on you.
Clever in a vacuum, Malfoy, that's for sure. But the dynamic between him and his father is established here. We get the discussion with the Borgin.
It's Borgin.
Borgin, yeah. I was going to say, I doubted myself for a second then. Yeah, Burke is dead.
I
was going to say.
Because he has one of my favorite names in the series. His full name is Caractacus Burke. That is not a good man. Like, it just can't be.
No, you're born evil in that case, yeah. I was doubting
never had a chance.
Borgin, he's speaking to Borgin and establishing why they're there with the intent to sell rather than buy.
Oh, one other thing I wanted to mention, like immediately before Borgin shows up, is that when Mr. Malfoy mentions Voldemort, he doesn't say he who must not be named. He does not say who. He says the Dark Lord, which, as we find out later in the series, is basically Voldemort's formal title when he's being spoken of by his followers. It's like, no, you're not allowed to say his name because it's supposed to be a thing of fear, but he's the Dark Lord. And the fact that he's still using the term, even though at this point, he's probably convinced that Voldemort's dead, but the fact that it's still like, I still have reverence for him, I still support the ideology. It's like, Hitler may be gone, but I'm still a Nazi, damn it.
Yeah, it's a term for reverence, and it's something that he wouldn't necessarily use in polite company. But definitely when he's when he's with Borgin, he's going to be using it as a sign of prestige, because in this kind of environment, that's something that speaks of power and I don't know, like I say, prestige.
And like you're saying with prestige, I even like that there's that dynamic between him and Borgin, because Draco takes a fancy to the hand of glory or something like that.
Which again is another thing that comes up later.
Right, yes, exactly. Which is like a thing for thieves and plunderers, and then Lucius is like, "What? No, like you're above. Like I hope you would not aspire to be that kind of thing." And why? And then like kind of backstalks the Borg and be like, "Why would you ever offer like such a low league? Like even though he's the bad guy, he's got class to his his bad guy."
The thing is,
standards of evil.
He could have let that. He could have let that comment go, because like he knows that all Borgin's really trying to do is sell the thing, like, and make some money. But he decides to like be incisive and like bring him down a peg because Malfoy, like that's just what he does.
It also really makes a point about the different kinds of evil on display here. Borgin is a neutral evil thief. He's just an amoral haggler trying to get money, and he's willing to be a cutthroat douchebag to do it. Malfoy is lawful evil. We have rules, sir.
And standards.
Yeah, standards is a big one. He's like, you think the Malfoy family would sink so low as to be a thief? You disgrace yourself, sir.
Which is why when they eventually part, I mean, we also have that little build up with, is Draco gonna open the door that Harry's in? But then when that goes away, you see Borgin turn away and start like mouthing off behind Malfoy's back.
Yeah, it's what you guys got to listen to the audiobooks. They're so good. Because it's like Malfoy goes, "Good day," or like, and leaves, and like, "Good day yourself, Mr. Malfoy." It's like this whole thing where he's just like he had like this really oily, "Oh, sir," and then like it changes. "Get out of my shop, you fucking douche." But he would never say it within earshot.
It's well realised in the film as well. This scene, with the, like I said there, Antoine, the approach to the cabinet with Malfoy looking at the through the crack. It was well shot, well executed, and it's how you kind of envision it in your head in the book as well.
Is this like an elongated scene in the movie? I feel like
it's another extended thing.
Yeah. But still,
is it completely cut out? Like,
no.
It's just a little bit of it.
It's
the
Harry's discovery of the shop gets cut out.
It was available as like Harry shows up in the shop in the movie, but instead of having the encounter with Malfoy, he just immediately leaves and has his whole thing in the streets. Whereas the whole thing where Malfoy comes in and does his bit is a deleted scene that I first watched on the DVD and was put back in the extended cut.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
But Harry managed to get out of the shop.
He does get out, and he's freaked out by seeing all these like people who actually look like witches and wizards, or like the typical, or not so much
stereotypical
witches and warlocks,
This is the dark
stereotypical ones with the noses and like the moles and stuff like that.
the people who just completely cut themselves off from the modern world, basically.
Right.
Let's just stick to the old and just let's stick with what we know.
It makes you wonder, like, what are those people doing with their lives? Like, if Harry wasn't there, like, would they really just be there, like, just being
they were basically
pointlessly evil? Like, for
I
no
feel like
reason?
they were like the drug.
We're lurking, we're skulking. That's what we do.
They were like
they're another one who have their own musical
piece. Of like
They finally saw him and got so excited.
It's also a little bit intriguing because it's also a little representation of another aspect of reversals. These are the stereotypical witches and wizards who are the source of the Muggle perception of witches and wizards, whereas Voldemort is the wizard who built himself up as the Muggle perception of the wizard, but trying to be the grandiose, big Saruman the White figure.
Well, it makes sense because these are the people who don't care whether or not they get seen by Muggles. Who cares if they see me use magic? They're just these runts in the background. So these are the type of people who are gonna slip through the cracks and get around the whole Secrecy Act thing. To society, discredit.
What's funny to me about it is it would play if he was like in an evil, dingy town instead of right around the corner from
precisely.
the ice cream shop or it's like this is just like the evil corner. It's like literally right there.
We should have gone looking for Nocturne in the Shambles, guys. We should have gone looking for a dark alley.
Well, that guy was pretty dour anyway, the ghost guy.
That's true.
We had enough of that. Yeah.
But we also get the introduction back to Hagrid, who is the one who saves him from this horrible fate of being sold something dark. I like the reintroduction of him because yeah, basically. I like the reintroduction of him to the story because at this point we're getting back into the the magical world properly. So it's nice to have him be there for that transition again, as he was with the first book. Also, a little bit of setup as well because he's doing.
He's always carrying Harry out of the dark wilderness. That's all. That's what he does. Carries him out of danger.
Sometimes literally.
or the burning house or whatever. Like he delivers him. You know what I mean? Like from
evil.
Yes. But in any case, and then they bump into Hermione, who's also there.
Yes, difference from the film as well. She doesn't repair his glasses again because that makes no sense because she's not allowed to use magic outside of school, which I like. It always seemed odd to me that she was able to... Why are you doing this, Hermione? Is it because you think you get away with it?
There's magic all over the place.
Yeah, no one will know, but that's not exactly Hermione, is it? So it doesn't fit.
That's true.
So I like that it's Arthur in this one. But yeah, the introduction again when they all kind of regroup up and regather. As well, Arthur's fascination with Hermione's parents just from the fact that they're muggles and their kind of awkwardness, like, are you going to introduce us, Hermione? It plays off very very natural. It's one of those things that everyone's seen at some point. The awkwardness of parents lingering around.
And I also like the trait that you see some really strong Gryffindor traits from Mr. Weasley when they're talking about Lucius, and he specifically says, "You don't think I'm a match for him?" Like that's something like a Gryffindor would say. It's not something like a Hufflepuff would say, like trying to just do the right thing by uncovering what he's doing, but being like, "Oh, you don't think I'm able to match someone like him?" That kind of pride that's attached to it. I thought was pretty good.
Absolutely. Even with just the more generic social interactions, like he's the one who dives straight in to kind of talk to the Grangers. They're clearly a pair of Ravenclaws, and like let's just sort of hang back a bit and not get involved here. We're not a part of this, and yet he just immediately reaches out and goes, yes, we must get a drink. Let's talk about the fact you're Muggles and how fascinating that is. You get like the personality traits from all of these characters again, snapshot really, really quickly and consistently, so that you understand who they're supposed to be. But yeah, we get the Gringotts bank thing as well.
Yeah, I also felt like again the secondhand embarrassment situation.
Yeah,
where
that was big.
I felt that one because it's like, oh my god, they have no money. They have no money, and then we get to my vault. I'm like, oh god, please.
Please don't open the vault. No, it's fine. I'll get mine later.
Later on, he consciously muses about the fact that he knows they wouldn't accept any help, but this time it's just like, maybe you don't need to see this and feel worse about your life.
Yeah,
like he doesn't even put out. You want some? Like he doesn't offer that.
Yeah,
but, I mean, why would he?
It is mentioned as we've said. Yeah, he would gladly give all the golden Gringotts to the Weasleys if he thought they'd accept it. But yeah, it's just it's one of those horrible things.
Fred and George do not from his own funds, but from the goblet.
The funny thing is that when Harry eventually marries Ginny and officially becomes part of the Weasley family, I could just see him somehow talking the Weasleys into letting him move all of his gold into their vault, because he's basically saying it's a joint bank account. We'll pool our resources because we're all living under the same roof anyway.
Well, I mean, it doesn't tend to happen that way, but he's definitely going to be spending most of the money on the holidays and stuff. He's going to be the one paying for things, I imagine.
By that point in time, they would have been more affluent anyway, because the Ministry would have been not as shit to Arthur, and also they have like all their children are like in the workforce, and like it just seemed what I mean. They just have more resources at that point.
Yeah, more people, because the kids are one of the biggest drains as well.
And also the twins' shop, like even though Fred's dead, like the twins' shop is still like a money spinner. You know what I mean?
Speaking of the shop, it's funny because the Gamble and Japes Wizarding Joke Shop is mentioned, and I wonder if either they took over that spot or they did. Okay, I didn't know if they ran out of business or something.
Yeah, they bought that. Yeah, pretty sure. I'm almost positive.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure they're stupid. I'm like 99% sure they bought that and turned it into Wizarding Wheezes. Can't say it.
Also, it's really strange to me that oh my god, Percy is Gryffindor. I know that the Weasley is like, oh, Weasley, the Gryffindor automatically, but like everything he does in the series, including what his reading material in the chapter right now, is like, dude, that's totally like Slytherin. Not necessarily saying you're a bad guy or evil, but like you do have ambition.
He shows traits from all the houses, to be fair, at various different points. Obviously, Ravenclaw and Slytherin more than anything else. Yeah, Ravenclaw and Slytherin more than anything else.
The other thing too,
would have asked him what he wanted. He would have chosen Gryffindor for family.
That's true too, because he does factor in choice.
Yeah. The other thing is just, it's the idea of how different house traits can manifest in different ways. And sometimes which house you're sorted into isn't based on which traits you have, but which traits you value in others. Like Peter Pettigrew apparently caused a hat stall between Gryffindor and Slytherin, but was ultimately placed in Gryffindor because even though he himself was not brave, he valued bravery a great deal.
And that's going to be based around about where the hat thinks that person would fit based on maybe like the friend groups or whoever was already in that house. So it could have been a situation where he was like, well, you probably would do better. Like, I mean, you're a pretty terrible person, but you might turn out better if you actually go to Gryffindor. You know what I mean? Like if he actually has the friend group and if he wasn't just like, a shitbag in adulthood too.
Whereas
he was trying. The Sorting Hat was trying.
Even the basic
if he had gone to Slytherin,
Pettigrew is the biggest mystery, like out of every character.
Yeah,
right.
He's the one where I go for real. But I mean, it does take a certain amount of bravery to like be Voldemort's bitch, like basically. Because
you want to be around in that space.
Yeah, he's around him a lot and has to do like a lot of unsavory things. It takes a certain amount of courage. So he's not like completely, without his merits there, but yeah, he doesn't belong in that house.
Who you want to be alongside?
He would have chosen to be. He would have wanted to be.
Yeah, but mostly because he's just found a bunch of new friends on the train, which is the biggest thing I think. Because the hat does take into account where you want to be, not just from personal personality preferences, but also who you want to be with. Because we know that while it's not always the case, siblings are often put in the same house, and it seems to me that the obvious reason for that would be, I want to be where my the people I actually know are. The people who I'm familiar with and who can help, look out for me. It's going to be a common thing. But if the fact that it's not always the case means it's not just because you're biologically related, therefore it's part of the decision process thing.
Yeah.
And we move on to the title of the chapter.
Yes.
Flourish and Blotts, where we find out that Gilderoy Lockhart is doing a signing.
He's one of the most like deliciously stupid characters in the series
ever for me.
But I don't actually hate him. Not in the same way Umbridge. I enjoy
myself some Gilderoy Lockhart. He's ridiculous, but I like him.
Pretty hilarious.
It's like I'm amused by his antics, even if some of the stuff he does is pretty unsavory, and I kind of pity him because especially after reading his Pottermore article and figuring out, this guy actually did have potential. He could have made something of himself, but he cared more about the fame than with actually getting good. So he just turned himself completely into a posturing fraud to the point where he could only do one thing.
It was probably the case that he was always second best at whatever those things were, whether it was like vampires or ghouls or whatever situation. And he's like, I'm always just like, I'm not getting the prizes that these other, extraordinary wizards are. So he said, let me put myself close to them. Maybe like not in a nefarious way, but maybe just to be like, maybe I can they can rub off on me. But then realizing that he couldn't step up to their level, and then just taking over and being like, okay, I'm just going to steal your reputation instead.
And it's interesting because when we reading his Pottermore article, when he was at Hogwarts, he was a frickin' school diva who's pulling the massive stunts intended to draw attention to himself at all times. And it's like, it's just the idea that even though he's not very well liked, even before he became famous, he was very, very well known.
Yeah, he's definitely a showman. That's the big one.
Any publicity is, or what was it? No. Bad publicity is good. What's this? I'm trying to say.
Any publicity.
No such thing as bad
There's
publicity.
no such thing as bad
publicity.
Yeah.
No. Thank you.
But also, all publicity is good publicity as well. I've heard that one for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are two ways of saying the same thing. Yeah. So yeah, it fits.
But yeah, you guys are giving me a lot more credit than I would, though. I've always found Gilderoy, dim. I mean, don't get me wrong. He's got his quirks that to his credit. But
his one thing is his memory charm. That's the one thing.
He's good at that. But he's a Ravenclaw, no? Like he's a stain on that house. Yeah,
he is.
But I think it's probably a case of him picking the house he wanted because again,
Ravenclaws actually do have a reputation too of breaking rules. I think that's also a Pottermore thing too.
He's clever. I just don't think he's all that magically gifted. You know what I mean? Like he's got to be clever to to scheme and like claw his way up, like and out
intelligent,
fox like the people that actually did the things and turn the tables on them. He's got like some wits. He's just, I don't think, very good at magic.
He's intelligent, not wise, basically, which is one of the biggest drawbacks of most bad Ravenclaws is that they don't have that wisdom pairing them, which is why Luna's so good.
He's in a way like ambitious. Like he's got overlap with like the Slytherin trait. I think that there is that like it would be a commonality to have like overlap between those two houses.
Ravenclaw and Slytherin had that overlap.
Yeah. It's like to attach the Mass Effect titles of Paragon and Renegade to the houses. I would describe Lockhart as a renegade Ravenclaw.
For sure. Also played by Kenneth Branagh from in the films, which I really liked.
Yeah.
He's Hamlet, right?
He was perfect.
That's how I know him.
Oh my god,
Hamlet, right?
but that was like really bad and like corny. That's my opinion on that. I had to watch that.
My favorite Kenneth Branagh performance as a Shakespearean character is Iago in Othello opposite Lawrence Fishburne. And I also
watched that one. That sounds good.
I would recommend it. It's good. It's Lawrence Fishburne.
Yeah, I know. I said Lawrence Fishburne and Shakespeare. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, he pulls Harry up onto the stage, obviously, and uses him for his publicity stunt, as he would. And that leads us into the transition with Draco, because he's like, "Oh, I bet you love that Potter, didn't you?" Typical.
It's the first time we get a feisty
style.
Ginny, because it's like this is the time she stands up. It's like, you mess with my man, and mess you up, bro.
Proves her worth as a Gryffindor, stepping up into the fray. And it's nice that we get to see her for the first time as well, because this is the actual Ginny, really.
Yeah, exactly. Because all the other ones are just nervous, like, "Oh no, I'm starstruck right now."
Yeah.
Oh, one thing I wanted to mention.
And crushing.
One little. Just backpedaling a little bit back to Lockhart's publicity stunt. Just a little difference between the book and the movie I wanted to mention. In the book, he just says, "I'm giving Harry my personal biography, Magical Me, free of charge." In the movie, it's, "I'm giving him my entire collected works, free of charge." So Harry basically gets all of his Defense Against the Dark Arts textbooks right there, free.
And just immediately gives them to Ginny in both versions. So yeah, I like that he's just, "Yep, you have this, I can get my own." He physically separating himself from the whole fame shtick that he so abhors, which is why she's jumping to his defense here. I like the fieriness we get from her here, because it's already been established from Ron. You have no idea how weird it is that she's being this way. She usually never shuts up, and we know that that's the case because she's basically just a female Weasley twin when it comes to her outward personality.
Mm-hmm. If anyone, I think Percy's the one who's the black sheep of the family, like not
no question,
Jenny or Fred or anyone else. Yeah.
But we get that confrontation with Draco, and then his father steps in, and
and
some lines that were done. It's pretty good.
Yeah. And in the theatrical cut of the movie, this was Lucius Malfoy's introduction, and I love how in the movie the first thing we see is that cane clapping on Draco's shoulder.
Very well done. And it definitely translates into the book as well. Whenever I'm rereading now, I picture that kind of just setup and the visual.
Oh, that's so true. Because when I read "I hope they're paying you overtime," it's totally movie Lucius.
The visual you're seeing and everything, and the audio, the voices. Yeah, precisely. It bleeds back over. Sign of a good adaptation.
The best part to me was also watching the behind-the-scenes documentary on the special edition Blu-rays, talking about the casting, and they got all of the actors to read the passage in the book where their character makes his first appearance, and you got Jason Isaacs reading the chapter. He reads the bit, comes to the bits where he's doing Lucius's voice, and actually does Lucius's voice for it. It's like, there you go.
But we get the conflict, escalating when Arthur Weasley comes back into the fray here. They have that little confrontation between the two with him and Lucius. Basically the same thing that you'd expect between Ron and Malfoy, just growing up, because they're very much reflections of their own fathers, at least at this stage, for Malfoy's case. And they have the Muggle duel.
Well, even the lines that he's shooting at him before, like putting shots about his work, and then also saying that he's not paid well for it, if you're going to disgrace the wizard, I was like, dang, like I was talking right there too, I was with him. But it's good to have those lines there, so that you can feel that, you can feel for the character.
But at the same time, I also kind of like what they did in the movie, where it's like there is no physical confrontation. It's literally just Malfoy drops the lines and then just quietly, sleight of hand, slips the diary into Ginny's cauldron.
Right.
Because it also kind of it's like the movie kind of makes the book makes a point about how provocative he can be, like the way he goads and manipulates people by insulting their pride and emotionally manipulating them, like basically Wizard Dooku. Whereas in the book, in the movie, it's a bit more the sleight of hand, the physical acts of deception.
Both work, but I think you can kind of put the idea of what happened in the film and just put it into the end of the book as well.
I think in the film, it would like kind of undermine his authority to have him get beat up and punched in the face by Mr. Weasley like this early on in the story. Like you kind of want him to be that sort of obstacle that keeps popping in and out of the narrative that you take seriously.
Yeah, that's the side of things you'd lose on it. You wouldn't lose both sides of his idea of guile and deception, but yeah, it's the fact that his physical presence would feel diminished if he had a bloodied nose on screen. And was like, wait, what? Or blackened eye rather.
But at the same time, the bloodied nose and the blackened eye could be used to build up his villainous cred by making it very clear that this is exactly what he wanted to happen. He's got the shit kicked out of him, but he's got a maniacal smile and a wicked glint in his eye. It's like, oh, I just got the shit kicked out of me, but I don't care because it's what I wanted.
Was that always part of the plan, though? I mean, in the book, that's something I've always wondered. Was it a case of he was just trying to do that, or that went a bit far too quickly for him? Because it didn't feel that way to me. It felt like he was like, oh crap, punched to the face, and then he just shoved it in after the fact,
Well, it's just a bit where he thrusted at her, his eyes glittering with malice. I kind of get the impression that he was trying to create a scene like this specifically so he could just disguise the book swap.
I mean, if nothing else, the fact that the scene plays just fine in the movie without that happening, it could be either.
Yeah. But it is still an interesting difference to discuss because, in certain ways, it's like both versions of the scene are still true to the character. They just express different aspects of his approach.
But the ultimate conclusion of the scene, regardless, is that the diary is placed in Ginny's possession. Not that we know that at this point, of course. But,
and then the highlight of J.K. Rowling's prose too is the part where she says either Fred or George said, "Get him, Dad." Like that's another. It's like J.K. Rowling being J.K. Rowling. It's awesome. Yeah.
I love it because you wouldn't know. So why, of course, from the perspective of Harry, no. I love that sort of those little tidbits that get fed through and just bleed into the perspective. As well, especially considering we know that these two both have distinct voices in terms of what they're saying, their personalities. We know, as we've said before in the previous book, who is the kind of alpha of the two.
Yeah, but that all comes from what they're saying and how they're saying it. It's not the timbre of their voice.
Yeah, no, no,
their voices are identical.
It's the fact that she keeps that in mind, even as she's writing the distinctions. In terms of their style, she knows that obviously they're physically going to sound the same, so or at least very, very similar. So I like that all of this is in mind as she writes this. It shows attention to detail again.
Yep.
But Mrs. Weasley as well. Well, Hagrid is the one that steps in to break up the five, of course. So Hagrid's back again, looking far too big to be allowed. And Mrs. Weasley is suitably annoyed with Arthur for the Muggle dueling.
I did enjoy how Mrs. Weasley says, "What Gilderoy Lockhart must have said," and then Fred says, "He was pleased. Didn't you hear him as we were leaving? He was asking that bloke from the Daily Prophet if he'd be able to work the fight into his report. Said it was all publicity."
Yeah, and she's like, oh, because both Mrs. Weasley and Hermione have kind of their own little crushes on him separately as well, which is worth noting because that comes up in this chapter.
She's a besotted old fool.
Yes, when it comes to him, yes, for sure. But yeah, that's basically the chapter. Yeah. But yeah, that leads them
Harry
to
took
just
off
leaving
his
the
glasses and put them safely in his pocket before helping himself to flu powder. It definitely wasn't his favorite way to travel.
Yeah, which I don't blame him for because that seems messy and unpleasant for sure. I know he's not a fan of Apparition either, which is probably just as uncomfortable.
The same, similar to sensation.
But still, it's very convenient at the very least. Yeah. But that's the end of this chapter, guys. Any closing thoughts before we wrap up?
No.
It's been a long one, this one. We always seem to spend time on Diagon Alley chapters. They're always extended.
At the same time, it is interesting, like both this chapter, how this chapter moves the plot ahead, shows more wonders of the wizarding world, and the fact that all of those wonders kind of contribute in some way to the world building. It's like we get a look at the seedier aspects of wizard society with Borgin and Burkes. It's like, Harry basically stumbles upon that frickin' dingy pawn shop at the ass end of town.
You see both reflections of the world and society at this point. You're right. Nice to see, and again, expanding on that world side for the second book, because everything has been pre-established now. This is that that dark twist to the whimsy we enjoyed in the first one. But with that said, those are our thoughts on the second chapter. Let us know in the comments below anything you want us to discuss in further detail or anything we've missed entirely. Shut up, Matt. Shut up. They don't know this is recorded way in advance. We'll still answer them in the comments section, if not the next time you speak to us.
We'll address this in our coverage of the next book.
Yeah.
Not chapter.
But we'll respond to you in the comments, is what I mean. Anyway, the point stands. We'll get back to you, and I hope to look forward to hearing your thoughts on it. I'm Ready For, and this is I'm Ready For, and I still have an outro.
Oh, right, yeah, okay. Anyway, outros suck. Goodbye.
I'm Nova 95. We hope you guys enjoyed. We'll see you guys later.
Here, girl, take your book. It's the best your father can give you.
Antoine Bandelet, Mischief Managed.
Goodbye.